whatever the thing is that you're not doing now that you want to do, you've got to stand up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and ask. And if they say no, it's okay. Dust yourself off. No hard feelings. Go to the next person. Do the hard things. Face the fears that are innately going to come. And if they don't come, it's probably not hard enough. That's what I always tell my 18 and 20-year-old daughters. Like, put your big girl pants on. You're not made of sugar. You won't melt. Get out there.
What is going on, L&M family? I'm just going to tell you, like the big teaser, I got a superstar today for y'all. Welder, TED Women session leader, 5 summit climber, Guinness World Record holder, Yale alum, and I know there's a list of other stuff that I didn't write down and probably a bigger, more giganticer list coming in the future. But we're going to get to know Miss Demi Knight Clark, and she ain't messing around. She's out there waking up the suits in their boardrooms with her plan to recruit the next generation of welders super, super, super fast. And she ain't doing it like the rest of us have been doing, running the same play over and over. She's writing her own plays. And so I can't wait to get to know her a little bit more. And if you're new here, this is the Learnings and Missteps podcast, where you get to see how real people just like you are sharing their gifts and talents to leave this world better than they found it. My name is Jesse, your selfish servant, and let's get to meet Miss Demi Knight Clark. Miss Demi, how are you?
I'm good. And it sounds so formal when you say my whole name, but I go by my whole name. And it's probably first off, I love the do the damn thing. It's very much my style. It's kind of like put on the big girl pants. That's what I always tell my 18 and 20-year-old daughters, like, put your big girl pants on. You're not made of sugar. You won't melt. Get out there. So I live in the South, not DFW South, but the other South, in the Carolinas side, so more East Coast South, because I know there's a difference and I don't want to get everybody mad where they're like, we're in the Texas South too. But we use middle names a lot. So people are like, is that a Southern thing? And I'm like, no. My grandmother was actually, that was her maiden name. And she was the one that was a Rosie and one of the first female Marines in World War II. Yeah. And she started fight the patriarchy from the 1940s of before it was even really a thing. Much like her being a welder and a riveter and all the other things. But she was a knight and she got married and she was like, I will always be knight. And I want all the girls in my family firstborn. Just like if you were a junior, I want them to have this name. And so myself, I've continued. I'm a knight. My daughter, my firstborn daughter is. My cousin is a knight. Her firstborn daughter is. So it's kind of a cool tradition. My daughters, I hope they continue it. Now it's way cooler to just be like, yep, you can take a name. You don't have to take a name, but it's more of this is an honor of, we don't take our other maiden names, we keep Knight. But it does sound a little formal that when people say it, I'm like, it's very official.
I think it's intriguing. It's a cool Knight, right?
Yeah,
my middle name is D. It's a
and every kid gets made fun of, right? We were talking about our ages before you hit record, and I'm 47, almost 48, self-identifying. Can't wait for the Molly Shannon. I'm 50 years old in a couple of years. But I'm dating myself in terms of when I grew up, of feral Gen Xer, because we watched Knight Rider and Kit and everything. So all the little kids in school would be like, Knight Rider, whenever a teacher would say that. And I hated it growing up. I loved it, but I hated it I was like, ugh. But they'll make a name to make fun of out of anything.
Yes, like my proper name is Jesus. And similarly to you, when I introduce myself, when I'm out public speaking and stuff, I'll introduce myself as Jesus Hernandez. Everybody knows me as Jesse, call me Jesse. But I do that because my mom heard me introduced as Jesse at a thing.
Oh, that's not good. Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I was in
trouble. Yeah.
And so that
I named you. No.
Part of the reason I transitioned to Jesse was because when I was a kid, man, they tore me up. Jesus the Moose, Jesus the Caboose, like they gave it to me.
Yeah. I was Dummy Demi. That was just,
no, that's not nice.
Yeah, I mean, how derogatory is it? Or like Demi is half in French, so they'd be like, you're half. I'm like, oh, that was a good one. Like,
yeah,
good job. Yeah, but yeah, I don't know where the dummy. It's just alliteration, and I think actually I took that one to heart though, because I was always the smartest kid in the class, meaning I wanted to be. So I always wanted to be head of the class. So to say that was like really derogatory. I took that one to bed at night, being like, I'm not going to be Demi tomorrow. Maybe that's part of it now. I mean, who knows?
Right. It stuck with you. Like, you got to keep slaying and keep making things happen. Yeah. So I know that the L&M family wants to know, of all the things that you've conquered, which ones have you learned the most from?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think everyone has an answer for this. And I hope everyone asks that question because it's a great question to ask yourself before you're not on the earth anymore. I've had a lot. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot. But I would say from a personal level, I remember I had my kids are 18 and 20 years old now. And so I had them when I was 27 and 29. And I was a young manager in home building. And
Yeah.
it was the housing crisis. It was 2004 and 2006. Those of us who are ancient enough to remember that time and be in management positions. And
Yep.
I remember for my second daughter, I mean, this is kind of women in the industry, I think, especially at that time. And I know it still continues today, depending on where there's a bigger delta of women in the space, especially in leadership. I used to get in my truck or my car and be like going to job sites and say, I'm going to be cleaner, faster, stronger, better, cleaner, faster, stronger, better. And I kept working as much as I could. This was really before, this was by choice, by the way. It wasn't my employer saying, hey, you need to get out there when you're 8 months pregnant and be on job sites and all the things. But
Right.
I was just like, oh, I'm cleaner, faster, stronger, better. I'm even going to take on pregnancy and you're not even going to see me like bat an eyelash. And I remember not the waiting room, but it was like after they give you a room and I was going to be induced, but they were like, walk the
Yeah.
halls. That's going to help everything start the process. And I remember walking the
Yep.
halls and I was on a BlackBerry and people were like, are you
Checking your
crazy
emails.
right now? We know you were admitted to the hospital. What are you doing? And I almost saw it as this badge of, well, nobody else can be me. Nobody else can do this. And
Hmm.
that led to a
Hmm.
couple of times of burnout. And I don't think, I
Yeah.
think that's gender agnostic. Everyone can get burnout. So it's not just
Yes.
women, but I think we're more susceptible to it, especially if we're in industries where you feel like you've got to be cleaner, faster, stronger, better. So that was a huge learning experience. And then being in the middle of all of that chaos of taking on four people's jobs as layoffs were happening and saying, I'm the
Yeah.
little toaster, I'll take another one. It was both the best time of my life and the worst time of my life because I learned so much as a leader. I was able to get into operations. I was able to get
Yeah.
into understanding the financials way better and the P&L. And I was in rooms that you would die to get in those rooms or
Sure.
before the crisis. But at the same time, I was getting carded at my daycare. Like my husband, thank goodness, we're definitely a 50-50 relationship and always have been. I don't think I could have married anything else, but he was picking them up. And I remember going one time and they were like, can we see your ID? Because we don't know you. And that's my joke is I got carded at my daycare. Like who gets that? Especially the mom.
Wow.
There's all this societal
Yeah.
pressure on mom. So that was a bad day. That was a really bad day because I literally
I
was like,
yeah.
what am I going to do with this? Is
Yeah.
this my benchmark and yardstick of success? As I gave up my family. And I think that,
Mm.
again, that was mid 2000s. And here we are, 2024. And I'm still hearing moms say that. It's a much
Yeah.
more acceptable environment to be addressed. And I know a lot of companies are addressing it, but I wish
Yeah.
100% of them had addressed it by now. So I think
Yeah.
those, just because you kind of let in with the mom thing, and just so we can move on to other questions because I could give you like 10 examples. But the other one would be more on my running side.
But before that, I want to give the L&M family member shout out. This one is to Mr. Jim Guntorius. Super awesome. I'm a fan of Jim. He's doing big things in the DFW area. And Jim sent me this note. He said, Jess, I don't know how you do all the things that you do. We can't thank you enough for what you've done, not only with the last event, but over the last couple of years. Without the do the damn thing thought in my head, breakthrough builders may have never happened. Your ripples of impact travel a lot further than you may think. Jim, thank you so much for that, my brother. As you grow, we grow. As one grows, we all grow. And I appreciate all the contributions you're making into the world. And folks, the rest of the family out there, drop me a comment, leave a review, whatever, get at me so that I can celebrate your comment on the future podcast.
So I have the 6-star medal. And again, like all this stuff, I'm just in the evolution now of being able to own everything I've done. And I want everyone to take that away from today. It's not about, and this is especially women. And again, I don't want to take the women's stance on everything that we talk about today, but it's just, we grow up without the self-confidence. They've done all the research on that to say that girls don't go into STEM if they don't feel confident and if they're not reinforced or they're not introduced the same way as boys. So we need to pay attention to that. It is very real. And then we're harder on ourselves. So like it's just compounded with that. So I see that a lot in my speaking life and my consulting life now when I'm traveling the country is a lot of women they have doctorates, they have crazy resumes that may or may not be on their LinkedIn bio. title because they're like, well, it's a little too braggy. There's actually a book like Brag
Yes.
More where women just need to do that. But I think that's everybody right now. Is if you've gotten a
Yep.
degree, if you've gotten the accreditation, if you've run the race, if you've done the mountain, if you've sailed the world, whatever the thing is that you were like, I was passionate
Yep.
enough to go do that. That's you. It's not bragging in my opinion. It's more of saying that's going to start questions like you're asking me of, oh, tell me more about that. It's just sparking
Yes.
curiosity and community with people, which I think we need community more than ever. So yeah, I did my 6-star medal, which was my first one, which is running all the 6 world majors. Now there's a 7th. So
I was just going to ask. Okay.
can't wait for that. But I thought I was done at 6. It will be 9, by the way, if anybody's interested in running, but that'll take a little longer. But yeah, and so Boston was one of my first in 2013, and I happened to be one of the last 5 timed and scored finishers as the first detonation went off to my left. And my kids and my husband, they were 7
Oh,
and
geez.
9. They were in the public library stands because I had fundraised enough for a charity to where they got VIP seats. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that was one of my darkest moments, just being a human, of everything you see,
Mhm.
everything that happened. And then coming out of there, not only with your own PTSD and the kids' PTSD, it was really one of
Right.
the first trigger incidents in the US that was really national. I hate to say there's been many more since then,
Right.
but marathons are much safer these days, which is helpful. I wish we didn't have to
Yeah.
learn what we had to learn that day, but it was not only the PTSD part of it, but it was also the survivor's guilt, which for a type A
Yes.
person was even harder to deal with than anything else. And honestly, the most amazing thing that had happened to me was I'm a military family myself. I was born at West Point. My dad was a West Pointer. My brother was a West Pointer. Most of the people in my family were in the military at some point in their life, if not retired military because they were career in it. And I just happened to be doing a health coaching set with the 101st Airborne while they were downrange in Afghanistan, all at different forward operating bases. And they were the first ones to start communicating when they got the news. One was in typical military fashion, before they really knew what had happened, they saw my time and they were like, you couldn't beat 4 hours because I was like right at the 4 hours. That is a
Yeah.
military family right there. Is
Yeah.
you couldn't get better than that. And then I think once they processed, oh wow, something happened there, they were like, you've been through
Yeah.
your first trigger incident and this is what you need to do to get through that. And so I can
Mm.
understand now, not anything about what it's like to be in war or what it's like to be in those really heavy areas of places that we are deployed in many places that are
Yep.
places of conflict, but understanding how they come back and how our society has a tendency to shrink people, or it's let's go
Yeah.
through the psychological breakdown process. When they were the first ones to tell me, like, nope, you have the 4th box in your head. It's a box that if it's not good for your family, it's not good for you, and it's not good for humanity, you keep that nastiness locked up in that box and you never have to unpack it. And once somebody gave me kind of permission to do that, I was like, one, you're
Yeah.
street cred. So if you tell me that, I should
Right.
probably try it. And you look pretty good for all that you've seen in 8 deployments or this historical level of deployments we've had. And then, yeah, it worked where I was like, if it's just horrible memories or things that you're like, I still can't fathom a 7-year-old child, right? Next, that's not something you have to repurpose and relive constantly, or like people are just morbidly curious and it's just a natural instinct. So I can't fault them for
Yep.
that. But I remember being, and this is the last story I tell, I promise. I remember being at so the therapist that they assigned to us, the BAA, the Boston Athletic Association, was really nice and associated therapists with a lot of the people that were there, who was a volunteer thing. And I was like, absolutely, I have kids. I don't know how to walk through this. And they said, get it physically out of your kids. Just let them run, scream, do all the things, and then go to school with them. They knew I had elementary school age kids. And so I went to the lunches. So if people have kids, you kind of understand, like, we go have lunch with your kids. Sometimes they'll put you that their schools put them on the stage and you're with all the
Yeah.
parents
Yeah.
and it's all the thing. And I just remember going to my youngest, she was 7. And so I was a little more concerned about her. And I went a couple
Yeah.
of times, like once a week for a couple of weeks. And one of the last weeks I went, a mom just felt, and again, I can't fault her for it. It's just like this natural thing that people do when there's these tragedies. She was like, what was
Yep.
it like? Did you see a lot of blood? And I mean, there were like 5 kids around us. And I was just like,
Right.
lady. And this was 2013. So, I mean, I feel like we have so much more social media that has completely, like, we're so desensitized at this point. It
Yeah.
was kind of the
That's the
early
part.
stages of that where I'm like, I'm not telling you any of this in front of
Right.
any of these children. And so I just made that conscious choice then of being like, this 4th box is real and it's okay to, like, before there was really boundaries to really say you've got to, just for your own mental health, like have boundaries with people and say
Yeah.
you can't
Yeah.
fault them because it's just this natural instinct to ask or to look or to go to the website when somebody died, and
Yeah.
you're like, why am I
Yeah.
wanting to do this? Or like me with true crime, I still watch true crime
Yep.
after
Yep.
COVID, and my kids are like, what is with the serial killers? And I'm like, I think it's this curiosity of being like, did it get
Yes.
solved? There's something in humanity of being like, I just want to know they solved this case, and like those people get justice. So anyway, but I know it's more from a place like that, but it was still like, I have to create boundaries. So if
Yeah.
that's of
Yeah.
any
Create
help,
the
those are
boundary.
probably the two biggest that stand out to me. But I mean, it's a life of lessons, right? Or a week, every week.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. So thank you for that, because those are huge. Let the kids get it out of them physically. I think that's absolutely
I
something
don't think
that,
we train that enough. Yeah. I was lucky
right?
for them to get, because I've used that multiple times with them when there's been just stuff they don't
There you
understand
go.
or things they couldn't control. I know we were talking about control before this, and I think all
Yep.
of us have control issues to a certain extent, right? Because when you lose
Yes.
control, you lose any kind of like foundational, I
Just
got
keep.
my stuff together. And so kids,
Yep.
I think we forget that with them. And we're in this new generation. I talk about this a lot too, is there's three terms for it now. There's helicopter parenting, there's snowplow parenting, and then there's lighthouse parenting. I wish, I'm sorry, whatever scientist, book writer, author came up with this, I could credit you. I don't. We could Google it right now. It's fairly recent.
Right.
But we know helicopter. I mean, you're just hovering and like
All the
absolutely
time.
hovering. Snowplow is, I've actually done this. I've always been like, I'm not a helicopter parent, which I'm not, but I definitely have fallen into the snowplow category before, which is busting the barriers out of the way for your kids. Because who doesn't want that, right? Like at the end of the day, why should they have to
Right.
go through the same stupid lessons we did or bullying we did or the thing? So I think that one's a fine line. I think all of us have been, who are parents, have been some type of snowplow at some point or another, or a kid pushes them down on the soccer field and you're like, oh no, like we're having
Yeah.
peace with that. I'm just not going to be like, oh, that's snowplow parenting. But really, I
Right.
guess the pinnacle of this is what everyone should shoot for, is this lighthouse where literally you just have the light on for them and you are kind of
Yep.
this calming
Help them
influence that
find their
can
way back when they need it.
light
Yep.
the path. But yeah, I think that's a work in progress for all of us. But yeah, I mean, in today's day
Yeah.
and age, I don't think kids are allowed to just run it out and play it out. And we see it in the trades where they just don't know how to use their hands. I'm continually, I
Yes.
don't say shocked anymore because I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. We are a self-fulfilling prophecy of there's a lot of benefits for them to have these and to be using
Yeah.
them. And I watch it with my own kids. They can assimilate things so quickly. I mean, they're
Yes.
on my version of Google Docs and they're like, what is this? And it's done. Or they've come up with some graphic in Canva that it took me a million years
Right.
to check. So there's like such positive advancements we've made and we will continue to make with technology, but we really did just throw out all the bathwater of saying hands-on activities. And now the pendulum swings. So now the
Of
pendulum is
course.
swinging back and hopefully we just don't have enough calls to action, I don't think. And we're not connecting the dots to what you were talking about in my intro of saying like solving it differently. The funny thing is, I don't think I'm just rehashing things that we saw in the 80s and maybe into the 90s in generations previous and saying, okay, it can't be the exact same way as that because we are more technologically advanced, but do that thing or that practice, just
Yep.
turn it on its ear a bit and get kids with power tools in their hands. And
Yeah.
so I think that's the curiosity with parents right now, that there's just not enough outlets. When we do say that to them, you have to give them resources to be able to do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of a bigger piece that I'm on in terms of fight the good fight.
Yeah. And I'm with you there. The helicopter parenting thing, I think, is also because that became kind of the norm, right? And so construction, there's a lot of risk. You can
Yeah.
bust your hand, cut your hand, burn your. And if you're a helicopter parent, no way I'm going to let you get close to getting a smudge on your shirt, much less cutting your body open. There's a lot of opportunity there. But you used the word that I've never heard added to the combination. So we're going to come back to this. But you said cleaner, better, faster, stronger.
Yeah.
Why cleaner? Because that's the first time I ever heard that in the combination of better, faster, stronger.
Yeah. I want to say it was in a movie. I don't know what 80s movie it would have been in, something like a Vision Quest, because I was always an athlete.
Okay.
And so
Yep.
I think cleaner to me. So when I say cleaner, faster, I still say it, by the way, even when I'm running, if I'm
Yep.
like doing a marathon or something, I'm like cleaner, faster, stronger, better. You got this. It's just this mantra at this point. But the cleaner, It's been a journey with this saying because when it started, it was really, I was Title IX in sports. I had really great guy friends. I actually joke about it all the time that I kind of had to buy my girlfriends in college by joining a sorority. We're just more naturally inclined. And I mean, ask any women in trades or really male dominated
Yep.
industries. They chose these industries for a reason because they just felt a little more penchant to going in that direction. And even with the things where you feel on your own, you still feel more comfortable in those societies. So for me, it was more about being able to say it not to their face, but I have to do things clean execution. So it's not like having a clean house. It's more of saying if you're
Okay.
an athlete, it's a clean play, it's a clean throw, it's
Yeah.
execution. If it's in the workplace, it was the same thing. I'm not going to be the emotional one. I don't want to be pegged as all the things that's not logical. It's cleaner. Like it's
Yep.
clean. It's 1 minute understanding. And I mean, once you get higher and higher in the business world, you realize the more succinct you are, the better. And so
Yep.
it was more it evolved into that for me of being like, get your point across very quickly. And what's your solution or what's your call to action? So it's like cleaner. I have a tendency to talk, as we can tell. I had some really great mentors who are like bottom liners. Get me to the bottom line because I would love
Yep.
to hear your
Yep.
10 minutes, but I need to hear the one.
So here's what I heard. Clean is not a reference to the neat. It's about
Yeah,
execution.
it's if you're
Being
a football
precise
fan,
to
yeah, it's a
execute.
clean throw. And Patrick Mahomes, I don't care if you like the Chiefs or hate him, but that man is the cleanest in execution I've ever seen.
Yes. Oh man, I love it. Okay. So here's a you've touched on this. You mentioned that you naturally form relationships and build friendships with men. Even before we started recording, you were talking about you've got mentors and folks out there, executives that are men. How does one go about doing that? Because, and
Ask.
when I say one, I'm talking about women.
Yeah.
It's abnormal for a woman to celebrate all of their successes and all of their triumphs because of whatever, like because of all the things. I know for me, I've struggled with it because of my upbringing. It's no, mijo, you need to be humble and you need to don't brag and don't bring attention to yourself. And clearly, I've gotten over that. But there's a lot of things that contribute to us to like playing small, like in terms of not just building the friendships, but like cultivating the mentorship relationship. How do you do that?
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you
There's
asked
one
this
or two
because
ways to get
yeah,
that.
this is a really big part of my life right now in the advocacy and consulting space. And really, there's some things coming in the first of the year, which will be resources for men, by the way. I will say that I have more men coming to me, and I'm so happy about this. So if you're out there, feel free, find me on LinkedIn. We'll do all that later on how to connect. But I
Yep, yep.
want them to be curious to say, there's so many men that say, I'm not trying to not hire women, Demi. They're the ones getting on the panels during Women in Construction Month or Ally Month or whatever the month is, because we always have to have a month for everything when it needs to be 365, right?
Right.
This is it. Don't get on and wear the pin. I mean, I think all that's lovely and that's nice supplemental stuff to do, but that doesn't need to be like, we check the box.
Yeah.
And so these are the same people saying, I'm an ally, I'm an ally, I'm an ally. And it's, whoa, am I like screaming that you're not? Like, I get it, but that's a defensive piece of, no, I'm on your side, but I don't know, like, what is happening? And so it's about
Yeah.
unpacking that in two buckets of mentorship and sponsorship. And so what I think
Ah,
if men are listening who are curious about this is like, one, just nobody thinks that you don't want to hire women. It's okay. So we're giving you a badge of honor on that one. If they do call you out on that, I don't, then that's their problem. Most of
right.
us, if we're women and identify as women, are not coming at you being like, you really are just this patriarchal, crazy person who wants all dudes. The end. You're an
Right.
awful company. It's more of saying, I don't know how we keep staying here. And that's why in welding, I usually go to the place where it's the most delta. And right now, like construction is at least at like 10% women. Like it's barely a needle move since I started in the industry in the early 2000s,
Right.
but at least it's starting to crack. And not just in like more traditionally known positions like PR, sales, HR. It's really in operational roles and or out into the job site functions,
Yep.
which is different. And then CEO, like getting it to be the operator of the company. But welding is really still there. It's 3% in the field. That's a huge delta. I mean, it's a massive. When you're talking about my grandmother was one of 15 million. So
Yeah.
realize we don't need to have a war to make it where 15 million
Yep.
trades, but it's happened before is kind of my point. Like we've gotten them in the past. So it's more
Yes.
about how are we doing that? It's really starting to say, name the problem or the challenge. Like, this is the challenge I'm looking to solve for. And if you're truly wanting to diversify your pipeline, which has a lot of benefits, there are P&L benefits to this that are well proven. It's not just doing the right moral and ethical thing necessarily. That's not the
Right.
argument anymore. It's just saying literally, your pipeline is secure when you have a diverse pipeline. Your culture is
Yes.
naturally better because there's more that's being communicated. There's more representation in a room. So without going down that road, it's name it, because we all know it, that if you only have 3 women out of 100 at your company, we're all wondering and being like, God, head
Right.
scratcher, because I love your company. I think it's cool. Name it first. And then also say like, okay, I need to mentor. Mentor is literal like job skills. So this is what I tell men all the time, and women seeking it. If you're looking for like on the job, OJT, on the job training, or you're looking
Yeah.
to get into like switch roles to an operator role, you got to go find the operators and go find those mentors who are going to teach you those tactical, cleaner, faster, stronger, better skills to say, like, you want to make this move here. Here's your cheat sheet so that you don't have to take 4 years going back to college or do the thing. And if you're in a good culture, you should be able to raise your hand and say, I would like to champion that thing. I think I see that in welding all the time, which is the coolest thing ever, of Fanuc robots, or now we're getting into
Yeah.
handheld laser welding. And some 23-year-old, many times female, are raising their hand and saying, I'll try it out. Let's go. And they're
Yeah.
doing things that many people went to 4-year, if not 6-year graduate school for engineering to do. And I'm like, look at the opportunity in this business. So that's mentorship, is like real world on the job training. What we're talking about, what you were saying, like, how does this happen, is sponsorship. And that is an active thing for both the sponsor, the person that would be doing the sponsoring, and the sponsee, if that's a word, the person looking for it. So if it was me, if you were my
Right.
potential sponsor, so you're the sponsor, I'm the one seeking sponsorship. One, what is sponsorship? Sponsorship is not only getting them in the room. So whatever that underserved population is, women, minorities, however you identify, whatever that population that you're like, I don't have these people around me and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. That has
Yeah.
to be, okay, what do I actively want to achieve here? And finding those populations and saying, hey, okay, now what are we going to strategically look at to say, not only getting them in the room, but also making that a good, hospitable environment in the room where everybody can feel like they can speak about it, meaning like not reference that person and say, hey, woman in the room. It's more of saying, hey, what is the language we use? Like
Yep.
just saying guys. I say that all the time where I'm like, do you realize that the narratives in the lexicon that you use means a lot to whatever that population is? It makes my shoulders go around the ears. I know it's not being done intentionally by 90% of the population, but sometimes it is.
Right.
Where I've
Yep.
been in early career and out on a job site, and it's right after asking like, well, we'd like to talk to your boss. Where is he? And
Oh yeah.
putting a
Yeah.
gender
Yeah.
to that. And then it's, well, hey guys, what do we want to do here? It's making people smaller, right? So, but now it's unintentional, and it's, well, anybody could be a guy, right, in this generation, but it's still, be intentional about the words, because this stuff does matter. It does. It's going to
Yeah.
give you strides in culture, but it's really more for the sponsee, not the sponsor. The sponsor just needs to know their role. I have 2 amazing sponsors, and I wouldn't be where I am without them. One is Nate Bowman, who was my teacher, weld scientist, been in the industry for 20 years. He just did 3M's Clash of the Grinders. He was the only person to answer my email when I got into this 4 years ago, and I said, I've got to do this. I've got to make the deltas go away. My grandmother this was always a legacy piece to her, to learn welding. I did my research, and I put a list together of all the people that I thought were the bigwigs of welding
Yeah.
I would be able to learn from. Not one of them emailed me back, and it's fine. I just keep receipts.
That's what I'm talking
I'll
about.
never say your names, but you know who you are. So it's all good.
Yeah.
I mean, you probably wouldn't have wanted to be friends with me anyway, but Nate was the only one that emailed me back. He was doing the Weld Labs series for Lincoln Electric back at the time. And he was like, that's really interesting. He told me to read the CWS book. I wish I had it, which is the Certified Welding Supervisor. It's called the Big Orange Book to a lot of us. And it is not exactly a Game of Thrones barn burner. I mean,
Okay.
but it's also all the tactical stuff of welding, travel speed, travel angle, work angle. And he was like, read that cover to cover, come back and talk to me, and we'll teach you to weld in 3 to 5 days. I read it cover to cover. I think I called it, it was maybe a month later. And he was like, do you know, nobody's ever, I keep telling people to do it. Nobody's ever.
And they don't do it.
And so we ended up
I know.
for 2 hours. I flew out to Hemet with Josh O'Neill at his school. Lincoln Electric was there. Nate was also filming, and he was teaching me to weld. I've since taken a lot of classes and done a lot more than that, but he was the first sponsor of me saying, I don't know her from left field, and I will take a chance on her. She's curious about this and she's ready to do the work. So I'm going to invest my time with her. And I always say that about Nate, is you are an organic sponsor without even trying. And so now I think he's an intentional about it, but I think he just was that type of a human before. The other is Mark Fisher at Lincoln Electric, who in a more corporate capacity We just talked yesterday, and I was connecting him with someone that really needs a handheld laser and had a fairly disastrous experience with another manufacturer. And he's in Europe right now. And he was like dropping everything. He was like, okay, let me connect you to the regional guy. He's over here. And I have never had him not drop things of, if I'm coming through Cleveland, we're having lunch, or let's sit
Nice.
down and have a
Yeah.
meeting. And then the meeting is, I mean, I'm just so lucky, but I'm realizing it is sponsorship. So I do it with other people too, of asking me how my life is, what's on your agenda, what's coming up for you, is there anything I can do to help you? That's a sponsor. Is really, it's time. You are investing in someone. And
Yes.
really, I'd say for the sponsor, you could see the playing field and see if there's someone you want to sponsor. But this is more onus in your audience of the sponsor. I just don't know what else to call it.
Yeah, responsive. Yes.
I need you to be the one that says, I have handpicked my sponsors and I'm going to go ask. And the worst you're going to get is no. But first ask and be like, listen, I highly respect you. You're a subject matter expert in X, whatever field, whatever the thing is that you want to do the damn thing. Whatever the thing is
Yeah.
that you're not doing now that you want to do, you've got to stand up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and ask. And if they say no, it's okay. Dust yourself off. No hard feelings. Go to the next person, but have a list of
Yep.
a few. You never know. Maybe all three say yes. I have yet to have somebody say no. I pick them intentionally, though. I don't just go ask
Yep.
the world because they're cool. And then I also say, do you understand what this is? I didn't ask it of Nate. It was kind of like mid range when we were through it. I was like, you realize what sponsorship is, right? Because this is you. And now he's
Right.
like intentionally doing it. Mark, it was an intentional ask where I said, listen, you believe in me. Like my street credibility is there. And I had done
Right.
some proven things to do that. And he was like, I'm 100% on your deal. So I am happy to be your sponsor. This is helping me understand what this role is. And when you get that, and when you see the light bulbs go on, that's my
Yeah.
mission in life right now, is for all these men across the country. And that if your industry is 97% or 80% male or 60% male, when the light bulb goes on and you're sponsoring someone who is a woman or who does not look like your lived experience, that's
Yep.
all you need to do for progress to happen. In my opinion, that is, you don't have to wait for a corporate to create a department or for HR to change their recruiting practices. You have personal effect in this future.
Two big things I love. Well, maybe three. Three big things. One is put the damn list together.
Yeah. Put your ideal
Like,
list. Be
yeah, put
aspirational about it. I don't care if it's like Bill Gates. And I love that story. Does anybody remember that story? Maybe it's like super ancient story now. But Bill Gates, when he was like 12 years old, called Bill Hewlett, Dave Hewlett from Hewlett Packard, and said he needed
Okay.
parts
Yeah.
for his little garage business that he started.
Yep.
And Hewlett was like, I thought the kid was so nuts, I had to do it. And welcome to Bill Gates. He became a very early sponsor of Bill Gates
Yeah.
because Bill Gates was a 12-year-old who was fearless enough to say, I'm
Just
just going to
ask.
call him up. I think he tells the story of, I was just an ADD kid who literally was like, I didn't know the boundaries. And that's what I love about
Right.
kids, because they don't know politics or bureaucracy or boundaries. And so I say,
Yep.
just throw off. LinkedIn has thrown off all those bow lines for us. You are 2
For
degrees
real.
separated from just about anyone on earth right now. So like,
Yes.
why would you talk yourself out of it?
Yeah. You and I having this conversation right now is proof of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was your post or somebody posted about you. I got in the comments. I'm like, this human being, I got to talk to this
She's
person.
crazy. Yeah, I think
She's
it was the Varsity
amazing.
Welding. Yeah, it was Varsity Welding, which like I don't know why that took off. It's the weirdest
Yeah.
thing. Like these algorithms are so interesting because you'll think, oh, this is such a good message. I can see this one resonating, and it'd be like, like
Crickets.
no,
Yep.
it goes nowhere. And then that one I still get responses on that one where it's recycled itself somewhere. And so I think it just touched a chord with people because Varsity Welding is the kind of another, I have hashtags in my head. Welding is STEM is a big one. And I don't know why I get both sides, very passionate people about it either being STEM or not being STEM, which I didn't know was a dispute. I thought it was a very logical thing to say. And then also Varsity Welding, which is, I remember being I graduated high school in 1995. I took shop class. I had to take industrial technology. Absolutely despised home economics and home ec.
Yeah.
So we took 6 months of industrial tech or vo-tech in some people's areas. And then we took 6 months of home ec. And I was like, I wish I could stay with industrial this whole time. This is my thing. I love the drill press. I love like shellacking my mom still has that shelf in her house. It's got like 800 coats of shellac and lacquer that I'm sure I lost 5 years off off my life. We never wore masks.
Brain cells.
OSHA, I did, yeah, OSHA existed, but I don't think in high schools. But yeah, so I wanted to continue that and was talked out of it by a guidance counselor, as many guidance counselors do, who like, oh, you're such a good
Yep.
speaker, you're such a good writer, you should be a journalist. You really need to go to college because you're not, it's either on for the guys that ended up, and it was primarily guys. So I'm going to say guys for that one
Yes.
who ended up as instructors in the early 2000s. They were never given the like varsity treatment. I mean, the stories I hear are very usual stories of like it's auto shop,
Yep.
it's welding, or it's jail. Well, that's a good three choices for me. Thanks so much.
Right.
I feel like conquering the world now. And so that ended up being instructors for this next set of generations. And so it's twofold for me. One, it's empowering those guys who never got any kind of, you're on the varsity squad. What is it at your high school now? And that's what I ask my daughters. What is it? If it's not the football team, it's another team that's the like cool kids.
Yep.
Whatever that
Yep.
varsity squad is, the welders and the kids that are choosing C, they need to be told they're a varsity squad. You are choosing a career path that is just as good, just as financially responsible for yourself as any college career. And we're not saying no to college forever. Your company might put you in leadership and you go get an associate's or a bachelor's degree. So this is not a like XO off of college forever, but career readiness is a varsity squad. And so that's where varsity welding started, was like, I want them all to feel like they're the top squad pick, their first draft pick. Like they're about to go homes.
It wasn't until
so it
my
resonated.
third
It was
year-
weird.
It resonates with me. It was so one, it caught my attention, and I'm like, I'm just gonna DM her and see
Yeah.
if I could get her on the phone. And you're like, yeah. I'm like, oh yes, oh my god, it's so I'm excited. Two, it wasn't until my third year of apprenticeship, plumbing apprenticeship, that I was like had pride, real genuine pride about my career choice. I was in a craft competition, national craft competition in Maui, of all places, at a big giant
Nice.
conference. We had fancy people up there talking and motivating. And I finally felt, man, I've never felt this good about my choice, because it was always, oh, you're
Yeah.
in plumbing. I mean, best choice I ever made, because it is what led straight to where I am today, which is an amazing, fulfilling life. I don't work like I used to, but I get to do some super, super amazing thing, and obviously talk to super awesome people. Now, the second point, putting the list together of sponsors.
Oh yeah, we did kind of get off that. Sorry.
That's okay. Is freaking reach out to them.
Yeah.
Text, email, DM. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. And then the last thing, this is the third add-on, is keep receipts.
Yeah, and I'm hopefully that didn't sound really snarky. I mean, whatever.
No,
I'm one of those people, because I get it a lot from women many times, of like, how do you convince people? And maybe it's me at almost 48 years old, is I just don't give two foxes. If I have given a case, is logical, has merit, isn't like very divisive, it's really just saying, like, this is a path forward. You can choose it or lose it, and they choose lose it, or they choose to go even farther with that into just silly stuff that I'll see on Instagram. I'm like, those just aren't my people. I am not going to put any kind of energy into that. You're just not my people. I focus on when I can kick a door open or I can crack it open. Okay, I'm a strategist and I'm a scaler. So I'm just naturally thinking, okay, how can I further get that door open? It's almost like a chess puzzle for me that I'm solving. And so I'm just not going to put any emotional weight to people that aren't on your team. I mean, it's like a team. Like, you're either supporting the Chiefs or the Eagles. And okay, Eagles fans, you stay over there. If I'm a Chiefs fan, go with the Chiefs. But like, it just doesn't have to get disrespectful. And I think it's really interesting. That's why like the welding is STEM part. I had posted something from Fab Tech where I did a handheld laser with IPG, and SpaceX and putting things in space, really, I'm like, that is how you are going to connect with this next generation of what they know and have grown up with, of saying you can weld, and then also going to the automation of welding by the time you're career age, or stick with hand welding, or stick with any of these trades. But they have a future tense of what those trades look like. That is an evolution. And I want to think it's because more of the fear of saying like automation and it's AI and other industries, like that's going to take a job. There must be a history to that, because those seem to be what it ends up being the fight. Is this isn't welding. This is ridiculous. There's no fusion there. There's no that. Meanwhile, that same bead that I just ran with a handheld laser welder just went on a piece of titanium that held one of the ships together. So you can dispute me all you want and get emotional about it, being like, welding has never been STEM. Somebody even posted like the welding machine is STEM, but welding itself is not. So it's just, I actually just laugh at them now. I'm just curious, is like, why is this threatening to
Yeah.
you to say that it's
Yes.
them? And I think the other
Yes.
thing is too, I say a lot of the time, it's not the color of the collar for this next generation. They did not grow up, unless they grew up in really heavy ag cultures and farming cultures. My husband grew up with FFA, super, super proud of that.
Okay.
And again, I don't want anyone to take this as I'm like defaming that culture. I think it's awesome that there's still a lot of pride there, but that's less and less places as opposed to kids who have just
Yes.
grown up in more urban areas who have been
Yes.
surrounded by gray hoodies. So I always say it's like, it's not a white collar. I mean, and I've never also heard anyone say, I am so proud white collar. It's really a blue,
Truth.
find the source of
Yes.
pride of saying like it's blue. So I don't want to take away from people who have that pride piece to saying blue collar. That's absolutely a thing. And I'm glad if that kind of propels you forward. But what I don't want it to be is a divisive
Divisive.
piece that
Yeah.
it's been in this last 20 years of, I think that's where the STEM thing happened. You know, basically
Yeah.
Y2K happened when I got out of college, and it was more of a, let's go the Google Apple
Yep.
route of Python coding and getting everybody into these desk jobs that are computer based. And there was a need for
Yep.
it. But again, the pendulum just swung so hugely
Way.
that it really took, I mean, I said it earlier, technology has
Yeah.
been a word in this side of mechanical, electrical, plumbing, even carpentry, but definitely welding since the day it
Yes.
was born. I'm just putting it back into the conversation. And so that's why I think
Yeah.
it's kind of funny is, again, this is not a new idea. I'm not like trademarking the term welding as STEM. It has always been STEM. It's just because it was a non-stigma kind of thing to talk about by putting your kids to be engineers or get into tech, whatever they think tech is, into
Yeah.
those cool careers. Yeah, that's robotics and whatever side of STEM that they wanted to go into. Meanwhile, CTE's been STEM the whole time. So I'm
The
trying to
whole
kind of
thing.
break that barrier back down and be like, I'm not taking away from the blue collar message if that's important to you. I'm just
Right.
trying to tell you, I know most of these kids are growing up saying, I don't even understand what white collar versus blue collar means. I see CEOs in gray hoodies. What does that mean to me? And so we have this I look at it as everything's opportunity. We have an opportunity to
Yes.
define that for them by just putting trades back together with STEM. It's a low lift to me. So I'm also a scaler. So literally, I'm like, when I
Yeah.
started this research 2 years ago, I looked at it like, oh, wow, look at the challenge and the problem to solve for hypothetically with all these numbers of shortages and skilled trades gaps and a lot of LinkedIn likes around that, which I don't want to be a part of. I just want to solve for things. So I'm like, okay, what's the
Right.
easiest thing in here to solve for? And welding, I was like, God, massive opportunity of when you have these terrestrial spaces. And there's always, this has been since the beginning of time in trades of bring back any type of trade. What do we have to do? We have to build a big school. And I was like, that's the Yale in me is thinking, wow, that's very high lift. What if you could have
Right.
something mobile that's transportable and then you
Yes.
can collapse something or you can bring it up when you need it? Or it's
Yes.
something like an onboard ramp that me and Nate created of, we're not the first ones to do a 5-day welding school or a 4-night or a 1-day experience. We're just the ones saying, hey, if you already have the employers attached and you can give them basic skills, we're putting out a better hireable human, not just a great welder. And so it's
Right.
like turning it on its ear a bit. So I say the same thing about the CTE stuff. I think it's wonderful. These schools that are these mega CTEs that are coming back, they're also adding in
Yep.
veterinary tech, the EMT stuff, and then also
Yep.
adding in all of the trades. If you have the funding for that and you have the space for that, I think that's in concert with this, but I think the fastest way to do it is to say we don't have to rebuild what was broken down in the early 2000s. You can do it
Yeah.
in a pop-up shop kind of way for now until we look at what are the true numbers. Because that's the thing that I
Yeah.
get disputed all the time is when somebody says we need 400,000 welders by 2030. It's, but do we? And I walked around
No.
FabTech and actually got that. And I liked getting that question because I was like, you know what? You're so right. Like, where did the 400,000 come from? And is it like 400,000 because people aren't retiring? Or is it butts and seats are just missing? Or is it a combination thereof? Or is it the pipeline, which I'm starting to see it's more of the long-term pipeline than anything else. It's not, oh my goodness, we are in such a like deficit today, 2024, 2025. It is, we don't have these transferable skills from our more seasoned folks being transferred into this next generation of the next 10 years.
Right.
So I think that can be solved by a combination of automation, because I say this when people are like, oh, robots are going to take everybody's jobs. And I'm like, valid statement. I want to be authenticating what you're saying and where you're coming from with it. But I will also say, just as someone who's been an operational efficiency person in many companies, is saying they want to produce 500 of the widget. you don't want to sit there and do 500 of the Model T
Of
widgets
the
in welding.
same, right.
You will go brainless so fast. So if that was your job, let's upskill you into something that you could be more creative in. So I try
Yes.
to say it in a more opportunistic way of it's not losing the thing. It's an
Right.
opportunity for transitioning into something that's even better. And then putting that
Yeah.
mindless stuff, just like AI, it's now you have an AI assistant. Did we really
Yeah.
want to be an assistant? I think it was just a part-time thing. So it's the same thing.
Totally. When I first heard, I can't, it's somebody I know personally, I can't remember who it was. It was like, it's STEM. I'm like, okay, like I don't care. But the feeling I got was it was invasive that I needed to change my messaging to talk about careers in the trades
Mm.
from a STEM perspective.
Yeah.
And then I got pissed and I'm like, wait a minute. Because when I got introduced to this idea of STEM, it was through academia, through 12, higher ed. And then I'm like, oh, that's why this is rubbing me wrong. That person is an academic and shoving this down my throat, maybe had an internship and claims to be a craft worker or tradesman. It's like, and I got to say STEM because you're saying it. And so maybe, anyways, my point in that
No,
is
that's a really good point of view. It's
I can
coming
see
from
the
the
rub.
same institutionalized folks that were saying
Yeah.
like it's either auto shop, welding, or jail, are now
Yeah.
telling you
Yeah.
like, why aren't you talking about it with STEM? Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Now, what I think is super valuable that the L&M family can take away from your response to the people that are getting emotional about welding being STEM, because I agree 100% it is. Don't let them steal your energy, right? They're not your people. Let
Yeah.
them go do what they need to do. Focus on your message. And like when you're clear, and this is something I just recently started practicing, there's no need for me to soften any of my message because when I'm clear about what I'm saying, I'm going to attract the people that like my flavor of crazy and I'm going to repel the ones that don't. And that's all I need.
So my reason in saying it is, again, I'm not an influencer, and I'm certainly not. Well, I'm certainly not an influencer
No.
or content creator of going for the like fest on whatever social media.
Right,
And
right.
I trust me, I see them out there, and it drives me absolutely bonkers because I'm like, all you're doing is repurposing the stats and then getting this
Yep.
emotional response, and you're doing nothing about the solution. So nothing will
And
drive
you're
me
not
crazier
contributing.
than when you do that. And so if anybody puts me in that category, I will double down, cleaner, faster, stronger, better, and be like out in the field doing a deal or like teaching somebody,
Nice.
or, you know what I
Yes.
mean? You just got to be in the
Yeah.
trenches. But why I say welding is STEM is because there's just such this huge opportunity of recruiting the next generation for that pipeline we talked about when we're looking at that long range pipeline of saying, why have you been separated out of this? Because you are the varsity squad. You are a scientist, a technologist, an engineer. You're an engineer more than anything in welding. I mean,
Yep.
really, like
Yep.
we have a welding engineering degree. And yes, I know you go to new levels to get that, but I'm telling you, go to any welder in the field. They love to have that argument too. Are you a welder? What about the welders when they get with the engineers? And there is definitely that the farmers and the
Yeah.
cowmen must be friends, like Oklahoma,
Yeah.
the musical, but they really are. And they use an engineer's brain to do everything they have to
Yeah.
do. So I get into some interesting conversations there. But so they're doing all the things, especially in welding. It's
Right.
more of saying it's destigmatizing it to parents that would have been, or guidance counselors that would have been, and trying to talk them into the college prep thing when they clearly are kids who are looking for hands-on, want to
Yes.
explore, do the things. If that STEM narrative helps them so that we get more of these diverse populations into it, I'm all here for it. But I also know that's one way to do it out of many ways
Many.
recruiting this next generation. So I think you bring up a great point. It is not the only hashtag. We need a lot of
Right.
hashtags to be able to just give them
Yes.
exposure at this pipeline age, which I'm advocating for that too. Is I saw that the funding was gone, even for nonprofits right now. The
Yep.
funding is gone for that early 8 to 14 and 15-year-olds. They want the butts and
Yep.
seats statistics. And I think that's what's being disputed is, okay, great. We love these workforce development, like real solve the delta right now for butts and seats programs. But we've left this huge pipeline, which anybody who's ever worked in a company knows your pipeline is your most precious resource. Like, how are we doing the
100%.
recruiting right now for
Yep.
3 years from now? So
Right.
unless we start
Right.
putting our Pell grants and the funding, and it shouldn't all be nonprofits, by the way, all of us are putting that effort and energy into that. I look at it like 12 to 16 because the guidance counselors get to them at 17 and 18. And again,
Yep.
if there's guidance counselors on here, like you do amazing work, but I just know there's many more rewards in the college prep arena from state
Oh, for
than there
sure.
are with career readiness. So unfortunately, that's the hands they're tied are
Yep.
bound to.
Yep.
But knowing that they are more influenceable at 12 to 16, and then if we add on to that, that they've never been exposed to a power tool, they've never exposed
Yep.
to a welding torch for whatever reason, it's dangerous or no
Right.
stranger
Right.
danger, all the things we talked about earlier. Those two things need to happen: exposure to all of these
Yes.
cool things, and then hands-on activities to where they can start saying, oh, as they do get into those conversations about what are we thinking here, and take those little assessment things of what's your career going to be, that's going to pop up and they can defend it. Unfortunately, with me, it wasn't defensible. It was like, oh, I guess I could be Katie Couric, which she's done amazing things. But ultimately, that was not my path. But I got talked into like journalism school, and maybe you could be a broadcast major because you speak well.
Yeah.
If I had just had enough to stand my ground and say, no, I really want to do this trade thing. Yeah, more kids can do that. And then again, you're just naturally, organically solving this pipeline issue. And that's what other industries have done. So that's why I say I am not doing anything new. I am not groundbreaking. I'm just saying, look at what some of these other industries that have had success. Look at tech. They have 30% to 40%
Yep.
women now. I know they still struggle with certain things like leadership positions, et cetera, but they're still miles ahead from a
Right.
diversified perspective than manufacturing and trade. So you could look at multiple industries that way and just say, we're just taking a page, to your point, on playbooks and making plays. It's just the playbook's here. We just need to agree that there is a playbook and we need to start following one. We can't just be like scratching our heads and talking
Right.
about statistics for infinity.
This will resonate with you. When I'm helping clients and folks twisting brains and they're discontent, dissatisfied, irritated, or just plain pissed off at their outcomes, here's the deal is the system in which you are operating, maintaining, reinforcing is perfectly designed to continue producing the outcomes that you have right now. Are you saying it's my fault? Nope, I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm saying that you are operating within a system that you're not changing. And there are buttons and levers that you can push
Yeah.
and pull in your system that you have control over as the decision maker, etc., to change the system to produce different
Yeah.
outcomes.
And change
And
agency is scary and hard to a lot of people. It's
yep,
so funny you say that because it was a very real world conversation with a couple of different parties in the last couple of weeks since Nate and my Weld Science Lab, the 5 day, has been out and about. And we have been very much about, hey, listen, we are not competing with 900-hour, 400-hour, 2 to 4 year programs in CTE. This is a supplement to that, right? This isn't a,
yes,
we are trying to kill the institution. You know, there is a lot of funding. There are
sure,
unions. There are things that are doing great work to actually put out great students into the world coming out of these programs. We're trying to say if there's really a delta to be solved for like real butts and seats right now, we want to put out good humans that have grit, determination, and also show up to the job every day. And they've got the basic skills that they're willing, these employers are willing to take on the rest of the last mile and say,
yes,
okay, now you've got a MIG welder on our hands. We're going to get them into our 3 month program to be in shipbuilding, but they need the humans. That's what we're hearing is they need the humans. So if that's the case, then
yes,
that's what I'm solving for. Now, the
yes,
challenge becomes with those folks is if they want to, because I have had these conversations too, and there's a lot of dialogue around this right now. And many of the manufacturers, it's saying, is the employer willing to pay for it? And if they're not willing to pay for it, then they don't want change. And that's in any industry. You have to be willing to put your money on the line and invest in it. Investment
yep,
has dividends. So you need to
yes,
invest in your future pipeline, whether that's the advocacy piece of the 12 to 16-year-olds right now, or that's also the butts and seats training that your company requires, or both. But you need to
right.
invest. And if you're telling me no after complaining about the problem, then I just found your problem right there.
Yep. There's some people that want to solve a problem, and there's some people that want attention about their problem forever.
Or,
Those are
I
the
mean, maybe they just
complaining.
need to vent. I don't know, but I can't imagine being in the business owner seat, which all of the
Oh,
pressure that entails, your financial wherewithal on the line as a human and your family and whatever else, and then your employees, why you wouldn't be open to change. And there's got to be some way to unpack that for them. But again, like that's more of the, If those are the people right now, those aren't my people. I'm more of
Right.
I don't want to call them bleeding edge, but they are the first responders to the problem of saying, yeah, you know what? The pain is real for me that I need to invest in something. So we are willing to
Yes.
be the first ones on this boat. And then the other
Yeah.
people are like, whoa, we need to jump off the Titanic too. Like, we got to get on the boat. But they need to see an actual proof of concept from somebody else to say, okay, if so and so did it, and that's just society, right? I mean, we do that
Yeah.
in the
Yeah. Yeah.
movies or like
Yep.
whatever thing we're wearing and handbag. So
The
yeah,
early
it's like
adopter.
early adopters are who we look for these things, and then the others will come, and there will always be that percentage that chooses not to. And unfortunately, I think I would love to look at your books for profitability, et cetera, or just growth. You might be able to stay
Yep.
the same in the same city and be a small shop and do the thing. And if that's your prerogative, then awesome, good for you. I don't have any reason to say no to that. But if you are
Right.
in saying this company or this part of the industry is going to last beyond me, you need to be investing in the future technology. And then you also need to be investing in your people.
Yeah. 10-4. Okay. I know that you've got a hard stop. So I got two things so I can let you go. Otherwise, I'm going to keep pulling all the value out of your head. So, one, where can people find you? Because I know you got a book
I
coming, it's in
do.
process. You got a lot of amazing things. You're a valuable asset to the industry and just to the world.
Thanks.
And so, where can people find you? And then I want to ask you the super secret closing question.
Oh, it sounds like pressure. Tell my kids that, by the way, the like, you're an amazing human, all the things. Like, everybody should hear that every day. And also read your own bio. We talked about that earlier. Like, everyone should go and read their bio in the morning. It's just a puff up your shoulders a little. You earned it, you own it, right? But you can find me on DemiKnightClark.com. That is my new website. Also find me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people because this is a very real conversation. And I love getting different lenses. I mean, there's so many ways to unpack these things that there's no right or wrong, and just opening the dialogue, right? Because that's how
Yep.
community is. When you have community, I think you really can have tougher conversations and crucial conversations. So find me on my website, find me, especially right now after an election, we all just
Oh,
need to
yeah.
lean into each other and be like, okay, especially in manufacturing, what's the path forward? Like, how do we go? No matter what side of the aisle you sat on. So anyway, I think it's all interconnected that way. So please connect me. I'm Demi Knight Clark on LinkedIn. Yeah. And we go from there. So,
Excellent.
so I'm ready. I feel like I've got to answer
Ready.
this question.
I think you're more than ready. We said it in the intro. You've accomplished, conquered many amazing things. You continue to be a trailblazer, be on the bleeding edge, like throughout your career. I got some of those details before we hit record. And so I'm like, man, this response is going to blow some people's socks off. So here's the question. What is the promise that you are intended to be?
Promise. Like, I promise this, or
Not your promise. I'll give you an example. The promise I am intended to be is to share my gifts and talents in service to others and help them, escort them, walk with them down the path of self discovery. That's the promise I am supposed to be.
got it. Okay. You have do the damn thing, which is awesome. And I think rather than it being like this awesome list of accomplishments, I just always made the choice to do the hardest thing. And so if I have any legacy at all, whether it's always my daughters first. I think anybody as parents, you're like, if my kids learned this, then I can be dust someday. And you don't have to be a parent to feel that way. There is legacy in it in anyone. But I think my legacy is definitely carrying on the same kind of just, it's not fearlessness, and that's my book, is from fearless to uneffable, is everyone needs to be able to figure out that you face your fears, do the hard things, face the fears that are innately going to come, and if they don't come, it's probably not hard enough. You should be scared every day that you're making big business decisions or family decisions or move across the country or run a marathon or whatever the thing is. Do the damn thing. But then also, if the gut check is there, I say the gut check and the heart check. If the gut check is there to where like it's like that is the fork in the road. If it's the fork, go with the fork. And then the heart check is like it sits with all of the morals and values and ethics that I believe in, that I want to stand on this wall and do this thing, whether that's speaking to people about the thing or that's advocating or that's starting a class or that's whatever it is for the next generation. I think that's my legacy, is that people not only do the damn thing, but they do the hard thing, because the hard thing is what people are going to remember and see that and be like, well, I can do the hard thing. And
Yeah.
everything that's a hard thing is just broken down into little bites of the elephant. So
Yep.
you end up doing this really hard thing. Or I love trailblazer and groundbreaker. It's just choosing to say, nobody's stepping into this blue ocean. So just step into the blue
Yeah.
ocean. I don't want to be in the red ocean where everybody's like bloody sharks fighting over the same old thing. Go define the thing. That's the blue ocean.
Oh, I love it. Damn it. Amazing. Of course. Do hard things. And I know you're inspiring me to continue, and we'll make sure that our listeners get the same inspiration. Did you have fun?
I did. And I will add one thing to that. Somebody gave me this nugget today that I talked to, who is a former gold medalist soccer player, she's incredibly inspirational again in and of herself. But she said to me, it's up to us to stand on the wall. So we were talking in context of women and fight the good fight, and show girls that they can be doing these things in sports or in trades or doing all the things. But we need to know when we need to step back. And this is her stepping back and me stepping forward, or Demi stepping back and recharge and somebody else stepping forward. So I think that would probably be my next piece of the do the hard thing. You need to know where
Yeah.
your community is and when you need to step back for a minute and then jump right back into the arena. So yeah, I did have fun, and I hope everybody remembers that in the next evolution of years coming forward. But do the hard thing.
Dang, you stuck around all the way to the end. And I hope the reason you stuck it like all the way through was because you were getting a lot of value out of the conversation. I always give at least one, most of the time, a handful of good nuggets, good ideas, good perspectives that I can take and apply into my life going forward. That's the whole point. I want to share that with you guys and also highlight the amazing people that they are. And I want to end this by saying, if you feel like you've been living out a script that was written for somebody else, and you feel like you're in the wrong skin, I know that life. And all I did was numb myself to make it through to another day, which if you're there, you know how hopeless that feels. I want to recommend that you check out Becoming the Promise You Are Intended to Be. The stories in this book will help you know that you're not alone. They're my personal stories, like the real stuff that I went through, and I'm sharing them because it helps keep me sober. It helps me contribute my gifts and my talents in service to others. It helps me turn my failures, my shame, my embarrassment into something useful and positive. So check it out. Be kind to yourself, be cool, and we'll talk at you next time. Peace.